Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this study of the social Sharia of Islam. We had started off with the study of social Sharia a couple of weeks ago. As you know, this is part of Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi's Meezan, his understanding of the Quran, also translated into English as Islam, a comprehensive introduction. We are studying various chapters of his book. And as has been pointed out earlier, also these are not being studied in the same order as they are compiled. We are taking different chapters, and later on they shall be arranged in the sequence of the book. So, as far as the social Sharia is concerned, today we will discuss some very important topics. But before we proceed to discuss these topics, let me just summarize what we have discussed up till now. So, first of all, we have discussed the institution of marriage. This is the first topic. And the important thing that we discussed here is that this institution is primarily the protection or the arrangement of protection which the Almighty has made for the offspring, for the newborn. The family institution is created by an everlasting bond between a man and a woman who come together as a husband and wife. And as the Quran has pointed out, that in this respect, as a husband and wife, they have different responsibilities, but they are equal as far as human beings are concerned. The Almighty has created mankind from a single pair of human beings, which tells us that no one is superior to one another as far as the genders are concerned. Both are equally important, both hold equal respect. And this also is meant to dispel the notion which existed in the times of the revelation of the Quran, that women are inferior to men. And the Quran has made it absolutely clear that there is no reason to distinguish between man and woman, between husband and wife, vis-a-vis their status as human beings. Yes, their responsibilities are different, but then these responsibilities vary from various setups, and of course there are some things which have been left to the understanding of the married couple as well. We had also discussed that this family setup which the Almighty has envisaged is something which has also been protected by making certain relations prohibited for marriage. Thus, for example, immediate blood relations have been regarded as prohibitions for marriage, and every person's own nature bears witness to that. And then we had foster relations, and just as relations get prohibited on the basis of lineage, they also get prohibited on the basis of fosterage. So lineage, fosterage, and marriage, these are three bases on which relations are made to be prohibited, and the reason for this prohibition is once again to protect the family setup, and once again to make people realize that there are certain areas or there are certain bounds in which they have to abide by, according to which they must live their life. And this whole family institution, as I've just pointed out, is the means of development, survival, and nourishment of the newborn. So just as the newborn needs a mother, he needs the father as well. Both genders have their own roles to play. And precisely for this reason, the scheme of God is that these two opposite genders should come together and form a family. And there is absolutely no option for a union between the same genders. For example, this is something we find rampant in the last couple of decades. I would say it has become prominent, and it is against the scheme of God. God's scheme is that the newborn must receive the love and affection of the father and the mother, and the nature of this love and affection and protection and the role that they play is so distinct that the two cannot be replaced in any way. So the opposite genders have to come together and obviously further the scheme of God by producing children. And again, here we have been referring to this also, that as far as planning for children is concerned, it is absolutely fine. You can plan for as many children as you would like to, keeping in view your own situation, your circumstances, your background. In this regard, the use of contraceptives to control birth is absolutely fine, because every person has been given the responsibility of rearing and grooming children according to his or her own situation, and everyone must be very cognizant of this situation and must not be rash and reckless in this regard. And certainly using contraceptives or birth control methods is not against the spirit of Islam, and it doesn't in any way entail the killing of cells, or as a result people think that it's like killing human beings. This is absolutely not the correct view. Human beings have been imposed with this responsibility according to their own background, their own situation. Of course, the health of the mother is of supreme importance, and every couple, when planning, they have to keep this aspect in mind, as well as the fact that amount of time that they can give to the children and other related things. So planning for children, the way we plan for various other things, is something which in fact is a recommendation on the part of religion. We have also discussed the fact that as far as the conditions of nikah are concerned, or the conditions of marriage are concerned, legally there are just two conditions. So the first condition is that marriage has to be solemnized through dower, through meher, as the Quran says, and the Quranic word is sadaqah, which means that the husband actually pays this amount at the time of marriage. The amount itself is governed by the customs and traditions of the society that a husband is living in, and it can also cater for the demands of the wife. And basically, this is an expression on the part of the husband that the wife that he is now bringing home, he has taken over the financial responsibility of the wife. She has all the freedom to earn and indulge in any professional activity that she would like. She can spend the money that she has earned in any way, but even if she's earning, even then the husband has to provide for her unless, of course, there is some agreement or there is some concession on the part of the wife. Otherwise, it is important that husbands must realize that when they are giving this dower at the time of marriage, it's a symbolic thing. It's a thing that they have to undertake, and that is why it is encouraged that in all such circumstances, whenever marriage takes place, this must be done, the dower must be paid at the time of marriage. And this concept of deferred dower, which has become so rampant and prominent in many Muslim scenarios in which weddings take place, is against the spirit of the marriage bond itself, and should only be resorted to when there is absolutely some compulsion, some necessity, and something is in a situation that we are not able to help it. Otherwise, it's in the fitness of things that the complete dower should be paid at the time of marriage. Also, this is no reason for any shame, because the issue of dower, the amount of dower in particular, when it is discussed between the two families, sometimes because of shame, because of shyness, people don't even discuss it, even though they might have an opinion. So this is the time when they have to realize that this is a very important condition of nikah, and therefore it must not be left unattended to. And the husband and the wife, of course, they can mutually agree, the families can mutually agree, but it has to be done. The second condition of nikah that we discussed was that it should take place between chaste women and men. Women or men who have been convicted by the court of adultery, they cannot marry, a chaste woman cannot marry someone who has been convicted of adultery or fornication by a court of law. Less than that, of course, even if someone has faltered, but the case has not been brought to the court, or the court has not adjudicated in this regard, then of course it would mean that there is this veil that has been stretched over the sins of that person, and hence he would be counted as a person who is still pure, and marriage can take place. So this is true for either of the two spouses. So these are the two legal conditions for the nikah to take place. So the first one is that it has to be solemnized through the dower, and secondly, only chaste men and women can undertake this. And as far as the condition of the wali is concerned, people think that it's a legally bound condition with which we have been legally bound. That is not correct. It's the fact that the permission of the guardian or the permission of the parents is not necessary at all. It is a recommendation because, of course, it's not just the spouses who are getting married, it is two families who are coming together. So it's highly recommended that the marriage in normal situations and circumstances take place through the consent of the parents, but then this consent, of course, must be a reasonable. If there is some dissension, then it has to be some reasonable dissension. But in that case, also, if the husband's parents or the wife's parents, they don't choose to be part of the marriage function, this will not invalidate any marriage function. Of course, this question might be raised that why exactly is this not happening? Because generally marriages do take place with the consent of the parents, so they should have a mighty good reason if there is some other situation at hand, and that too they should realize is not something that can stop the boy or the girl or the man or the woman to get married. It is basically the consent of the two which is final, and as a result of this, parents should also take cue that as healthy parents, as parents who know how to deal with their adult children, they can suggest, they can present their own experience. They can even tell them that if some of their children or one of their children is doing something which they might think would be very, very critical, they can even tell their opinion, but they just cannot forcibly stop their adult children from getting married to whomever they want to, nor can they in any way create such hindrances as we generally see parents creating, especially in Oriental societies, especially in third world Muslim countries. So in this regard, the best thing is to present one's experience and advice, but the final decision has to be left to the boy and the girl. And I have cited examples from the Hadith literature which shows how the Prophet was very, very particular in this regard, that unless the consent of both boys and girls, both the boy and the girl is there, it should not happen in a coercive way. They should not be forced into marriage. So just as the dislike should not go to this extent that they don't even take part in this marriage, similarly, they should not be in a situation that they force their children to marry according to their own wishes. Then we discussed the family setup, and the family setup, of course, when the husband and the wife come together, the two will be in a setup that what we call is family. And in this regard, the Quran has said that because the husbands have been imposed, it's on their shoulders that lies the responsibility of earning for the family, so they are to be regarded as the head of the family. A head of the family by no means is someone who is superior to the spouse or to the wife in any case or in any way. It's just that he has a certain responsibility, and the Quran says it's because of the fact that the husband has been given this responsibility of earning for the family, so therefore it is in the fitness of things that he be given this position. Had women been given this responsibility, it might equally be possible that they would have been regarded as the head of the family. But the Quran does not stop here, actually, and it says that there are one other reason as well why a husband has been regarded as the head of the family. So the reason which the Quran gives, other than the fact that he is responsible for the family, is that بَمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ, which means that he is more suitable in this aspect, temperamentally, psychologically, physiologically, the ability to take decisions and to ability to take tough decisions usually is something which men or husbands are more akin to, more prone to. So this is, not, of course, there are exceptions, but generally this is how genders have been created. So these are the two reasons. And then we have also discussed that in normal circumstances, in general circumstances, difference of opinions between the husband and wife must be resolved very amicably through discussion, and the person of the two who is more logical in his or her reasoning regarding a certain decision, the other must acquiesce, the other must submit. The husband should not think that if he is accepting the reasoning of his wife, then this is something of a matter of inferiority on his part. And similar is the case with the wife. So basically it should be a discussion oriented, I would say. And husbands must realize that basically marriage is a companionship and not dictatorship. However, having said all this, there could be situations in which there is a deadlock. And this deadlock, of course, relates to strategic decisions. And strategic decisions, of course, relate to things that you have to decide between yourselves, in which the issue of right and wrong is not as much as the issue of preference is there. So, in such issues, if there is a deadlock, then the Quran says, by virtue of the fact that he is the head of the family, then the decision of the husband will prevail. Not that it's correct, not on the basis of the fact that it is deemed correct by the Quran, but on the basis of the fact that someone's decision has to be accepted. If there is a deadlock, yes, the deadlock will be discussed, it will be tried to be resolved, but if it doesn't get resolved and there is a stalemate, then and things have got stuck, then you have to move on in life. So one decision has to prevail. The Quran says that this has to be the decision of the person who is the head of the family. We also discussed the issue of wife beating, and we provided the right perspective that this is a very, very special scenario in which a wife stands up against the husband's authority, and she actually claims that I'm going to be the head of the family and you have to submit to me. And it's like turning the wheel around. It's like turning the coin to the opposite side. The Quran says that in such situations, if husbands feel that these wives are turning rebellious to them, they are not accepting their authority, it is then that a prescribed procedure is laid down. And the third step in that procedure is that if the husbands think that to preserve the family, to check the wife from her rebelliousness, if gently beating her can be resorted to, and if that is something which the husband thinks can preserve the family, then he should try this. He has this option. But remember, this is an option, not an obligation. It's not something that has to be done. It has to be used prudently. And I have also discussed this, that as far as these measures are concerned, they are primarily meant to conserve the family, to preserve the family, and they are not in any way mandatory. Also, I pointed this out that today, while we are living in an urban society, in an urban society, it is often difficult to imagine how this can even be thought of. But remember, the Quran was revealed in a society that was more feudalistic, more rural society. It was perhaps lying at the pinnacle of this transformation of cultures, in which urbanization was about to set in, and rural cultures were about to be shown the curtain. And in such cultures, at times, checking one's wife with force is something that is acceptable to the wife as well, and it does mend the affairs. But remember, it's not always possible, or I would say in most cases it's not possible, or maybe even 100% not possible in urban cultures. So because of the fact that the Quran was revealed for both urban and rural cultures and civilizations, therefore this had to be there. And the thing is that it has to be used prudently and affectionately and effectively. Then we also discussed the issue of polygamy, and we discussed how this issue was rampant in the Arab society. People used to marry for various reasons, and they had a lot of wives. Arabs had a great number of wives, and Arab culture in those times never had any problem with this. Women, in fact, used to feel proud if their husbands would have multiple wives. And in those times, especially when the Prophet had migrated to Medina because of a lot of wars, when children became orphans, the Almighty said, well, in order to take care of these orphans, it is best to marry their mothers, and this would be something that will make them easier for them to be managed. And therefore, the Quran appealed to them that you marry for various reasons. This is one other reason, for the welfare of the orphans and for the widows do get married. We know that the Prophet himself took lead in this, and he married Salama, and he also married Hafsa anha, whose husband was martyred in the Battle of Uhud, and other Muslims also did so. But the Quran said that even for this noble gesture that you would like to support the orphans, this should also only take place if you are able to be just. And there was also a limit imposed between the number of wives. You could not take 7, 8, 9, 10 or 12 wives, as was the case in the Arab society. You had to confine the number to 4. And the Quran says even then, if you're not able to do justice between the wives, then for such a noble cause as to support the orphans, you should not undertake it. And the Quran has also suggested that as far as
the orphans are concerned, you have to take care of them in a very affectionate manner. And if this justice cannot be meted out, then this is something that even for this cause, you should not undertake it. And we also thought that as far as this justice is concerned, the Quran has made it amply clear that it doesn't mean that you have to have the same inclination of heart regarding all your wives. If you have 3 or 4 wives, it doesn't mean that you should love each of them equally. The Quran says that even if you try to, this cannot be possible, because this is the area of the heart, the realm of the heart, and the attachment of the heart, or the affinity of the heart, is something which relates to something which you cannot help. I mean, you can get attached to one wife more than the other, and this is an area which the Quran says it's not asking for justice. Justice is required in all that her rights are concerned. For example, giving time, or the amount of allowance that you're giving your wives. So all these apparent things, they have to be done so equally, but not the inclination of one's heart. And then we also discussed finally that the issue of the marriages of the Prophet, who were exempt from this law of 4 marriages because of the reason that we discussed last time, that he was given a special responsibility of being the Prophet and messenger, the last messenger of God. He had to take care of a lot of things. He had to take care of a certain, a very important custom that was rampant in the Arab society, in which the wife of an adopted child was regarded to be prohibited to oneself, and therefore this needed to be corrected, and the Prophet did so. He married because of the fact that he was asked to take lead in supporting orphans, and then of course he married for reasons that we discussed last time, which included the fact that women who migrated with him, women who were caught in a military campaign and they were set free, and they wanted to get married to the Prophet as a means to comfort them. The Prophet was given this permission, and also women who from amongst his family who went with him to Medina, they were also given this option. The Prophet was given this option that in order to comfort them, in order to make them realize that they had done something great for the cause of religion, he could marry them. And of course, we saw that how these marriages were conducted one after the other. And also we had seen that as far as the marriage of the Prophet with Khadija radhiyallahu anha, his first marriage is concerned, that is perhaps the only marriage which he conducted out of his own will. The rest were all contingent according to circumstances which arose and according to the dictates of the Almighty. And we also discussed the fact that the Prophet had a concubine. He had a slave lady called Maria the Copt, and she was gifted to him by the king of Egypt, and the Prophet did not set her free. There are people who think that, well, he could have set her free. The question is that if you go back in those times, you'll realize that this was something which would have dealt a severe blow to a royal gift. It was not the custom for a royal gift to go in such a way, and plus, more importantly, she was there in the life of the Prophet as a slave lady, so that the Prophet, during that time of interim time of slavery, in which slavery was given sanction, he could show to the rest of the people who still had slave women that how they should deal with them. So he set an example, and it is reported in history that virtually she enjoyed the rights of a wife, although she was not a wife, but she had the same rights, and the respect that she commanded was also something which everyone saw. So someone had to present this example, which the Prophet did. And this is as far as we had covered in the last 3 or 4 sessions. So today we will move ahead and discuss some more topics. And coming up is the first topic is of very supreme importance. It's also a very sensitive topic. It's also a culturally tabooed topic. People generally don't discuss this, but because of the fact that it's a very essential part of marital life, the Quran has made it a point to discuss it, and we will discuss what the Quran says. So this is what we call the etiquette of sexual intimacy, of course, implying between the husband and wife. So let us read these verses. These are verses 222 and 223. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْمَحِيزِ قُلْ هُوَ أَذًى فَاعْتَزِلُوا النِّسَاءَ فِي الْمَحِيزِ وَلَا تَقْرَبُوهُنَّ حَتَّى يَطْهُرْنَ فإذا تطهرن فأتوهن من حيث أمركم الله إن الله يحب التوابين ويحب المتطهرين. I'm just going to translate up till now, up till the point that we have read, and then I'll read out the next part of the verse. And they ask you concerning women's courses, of course, referring to their menstrual cycles. Tell them they are in impurity, so keep away from women in their courses and do not approach them until they have cleansed themselves from blood. But when they have purified themselves after taking a bath, approach them in the manner the Almighty has directed you in your instincts. Indeed, God loves those who constantly repent and keep themselves clean. And then the Quranic verse is, or the remaining part is, Nisa'ukum harthul lakum fa'tu harthakum anna shi'tum وقدموا لأنفسكم واتقوا الله واعلموا أنكم ملاقوه وبشر المؤمنين. These women of yours are your cultivated land. Go then into your land in any manner you please, and through this plan for the future of both this and the next world, and remain faithful to God. And bear in mind that you shall necessarily meet him one day, and O Prophet, give good tidings of success and salvation to the believers on that day. So if you take a note of the words that have been just narrated before you, you'll see in summary that there are three things, or that there are three areas regarding the prohibition, in which there is a prohibition vis-a-vis sexual intimacy. So barring these three areas which I just present before you, the verse of the Quran is فَأْتُوا هَرْثَكُمْ أَنَّ شِئْتُمْ. So first of all, the Quran has actually given this simile, or this like comparing your wives to a certain element. And we know that people, the Arabs, they were farmers, and a farmer, when given this simile, when given this comparison, readily understands what it means. So they are told that your wives are like your cultivated land. So cultivated land is something which every single person, every farmer holds very dear. It's like the most prized possession. And the Quran says that just as you go into your cultivated land in any manner, so he says that فَأْتُوا هَرْثَكُمْ أَنَّ شِئْتُمْ, that you go to your wives in any manner. So there are no restrictions in sexual intimacy, barring the ones which have been just mentioned. So it is like telling the husband and wife, it is like telling the couple who are going to get married or who would like guidance from the Quran, that except for what has just been mentioned earlier, which I'm just going to describe to you, all forms of sexual intimacy that you can think of, that come to your mind, are legitimate, of course, if they are consensual. But the three things which are prohibited. So the first thing which has been prohibited is the very one from which these verses start off, and that is menstrual cycle. So the Quran says that the first prohibition regarding sexual intimacy is that when the wife is passing through her periods, through her courses, then sexual intimacy is prohibited, because of course the blood that oozes out is impure. And the Quran says that once this finishes, of course this is also the case when a woman gives birth to, and so the puerperal cycle is something very similar to the menstrual cycle also. So once the blood stops in either cases, the women are required to have a bath, and after that they become pure. So the Quran says that this is one area that men must be very careful of, that when women or their wives are passing through these cycles, then they cannot be sexually intimate with them. However, of course, this means that sexual intercourse is something which is prohibited. Less than that, or something which does not fall in this category, all other forms of sexual intimacy, barring the ones, of course, which are prohibited, are allowed. And just to give you an idea how this allowance is there, let me cite some narratives which Ustaz Ghamidi has cited in his book, which will tell you that even during the menstrual cycle, how the Prophet's wives would conduct their affairs. So it is narrated about Aisha anha that during her menstrual cycle, she would comb the hair of the Prophet when he would be offering itqaf in the mosque. So the Prophet would just peep out he would just expose his head to the quarters of Aisha, and the other part of the Prophet below the neck would be still in the mosque, and she would comb her hair, implying the fact that this is not an impurity. I mean, because we know that the Jews at the times of the revelation of this verse would regard women to be impure once they would pass through their menstrual cycle, and there was a lot of hue and cry in such situations. Women would at times be regarded as untouchables, and they would not sit in the company of men. So these extremes were done away with, and the Prophet said, well, actually what has been prohibited is sexual intercourse. Other forms of interaction are absolutely fine. So it is further narrated from Aisha that the Prophet would read the Quran while placing a pillow in her lap. She would be passing through her menstrual cycle, and the Prophet would place a pillow in her lap, and he would place the Quran on it. In another hadith narrated from her, she says that when any of the wives of the Prophet would be undergoing her menstrual cycle and the Prophet wanted to be intimate with her, he would direct her to tie a loincloth on the lower part of the body, and he would then approach her. This again tells us that any form of sexual intimacy other than sexual intercourse is something which the Prophet did. And he, of course, by his example, by the way he conducted himself in such situations, tells us how we should also be careful in this regard. Yes, sexual intimacy in the form of intercourse is not allowed, but other forms of sexual contact, there is absolutely no problem about them. One thing that I'd also like to clarify here is that in such a situation, people often think, or this is a huge misconception amongst Muslims, that women, when they are passing through their menstrual cycles, they cannot touch the Quran. There is no such prohibition mentioned anywhere in the Quran or in the Sunnah of the Prophet. And so therefore, if they would like to touch the Quran, they would like to read the Quran, they would like to there are women who have the Quran in their hearts. There are women who would like to teach the Quran because they are teachers. There are women who would like to read the Quran from the Musaf, from the book itself. It is perfectly fine as far as religion is concerned. Yes, if by their own taste or inclination they would not like to do so is another thing. But they must remember that there is no prohibition in this matter vis-a-vis religion. The second and third prohibitions are mentioned adjacent to one another in the verse that we have just studied, and it says that once women have passed through their menstrual cycles and they have become pure by having a bath, the Quran says فَأْتُوا هَرْثَكُمْ أَنَّ شِئْتُمْ, that you should go to your women, in the way you'd like. فَأْتُوا هَرْثَكُمْ أَنَّ شِئْتُمْ, as far as your instincts are concerned, you can go to your women. And remember that this is something you would also relish. So the Quranic words are فَإِذَا تَطَهَّرْنَ فَأْتُوهُنَّ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَمَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ. So once they have become pure, فَإِذَا تَطَهَّرْنَ, by having a bath, فَأْتُوهُنَّ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَمَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ. You go to them, you approach them, you enter them from where God has guided you in your instincts. Which tells us that only vaginal intercourse is something which has been allowed. Oral intercourse, or for that matter, anal intercourse, is something which the Quran has not allowed. And therefore, the proper way of having intercourse is through the way which we have been guided through in our instincts. Oral sex, in which of course we know what happens, and anal sex, we know what happens. And both these forms of sexual intimacy are disallowed by the Quran. So if we can sum up, we can say that there are three prohibitions vis-a-vis sexual intimacy, and if they are kept in mind, then all the other forms of intimacy, whatever comes to their mind, to the mind of the couple, they can be indulged in, they can be practiced. So first is sexual intercourse during menstrual cycles of the wives. The second is oral intercourse, and the third is anal intercourse. Other than that, there is no other restriction which the Sharia has mentioned. So this is an area, of course, which is a taboo subject. This is an area in which there are a lot of questions. This is an area which is seldom discussed. So not for the Quran, not for the Prophet, because this is part of our marital lives, and a lot of confusion and a lot of misinformation and disinformation prevails in this area. So therefore, it is of utmost importance that we discuss this. Now we go on to the next topic, and this topic is called ila, and the word ila is a form of severing of marital ties between the husband and wife, which took place in the times of the Prophet. So it is called ila. This meant that as far as a husband would concern, he would swear an oath to sever sexual relations with his wife. So he would say that I swear that I'm not going to have relations with you. The Quran did not like this because it leaves the wife in an uncertain state. So the Quran has advised husbands that of the times of the Prophet, because this is a custom of the era of the Prophet, that if they have decided to sever sexual relations with their wives, then they should either resume them or they should divorce their wives. They should not leave their wives in such an uncertain state. So the Quranic words are لِلَّذِينَ يُؤْلُونَ مِن نِسَائِهِمْ تَرَبُّصُ أَرْبَعَةِ أَشْهُرٍ فَإِنْ فَاءُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ وَإِنْ عَزَمُوا الطَّلَاقَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Those who swear to abstain from their wives must wait for 4 months. If they change their mind, Allah is forgiving and ever merciful. But if they decide to divorce them, they should know that He hears all and knows all. So the Almighty has said that, well, if you have to make up your mind, come what may, then you just have these 4 months. So after this, you must decide that either you resume your sexual relations with your wives or you divorce her. This is not on that you leave her in such an uncertain state. And we can also see that exactly on the basis of this, the Prophet has also said that just as men should not sever marital contact with their wives without any reason, on a very similar basis, women have also been advised that without any legitimate excuse, they should not sever relations with their husbands, because this is something which will open the door to many other evil things, and the husband would sneak in and he might fall into. So therefore, in normal circumstances, because of the fact that the Quran has said that both are a robe to each other, hunna libasul lakum wa antum libasul lahunna, which means that women and men are like attire to one another. They protect one another from the vicissitudes of weather. They also protect one another from getting into sin, and they are a means of satisfying a very legitimate desire. So on a very similar basis, the Quran has of course advised men here that they must not leave their women or their wives in such a indefinite state. And on similar grounds, you'll find that there is a narrative of the Prophet which says that when a husband calls his wife to bed for intimacy and she refuses, and as a result the husband spends the night in anger, then angels curse the wife all night until dawn. Now this narrative has been understood to mean that whenever the husband calls his wife for sexual intimacy, she has to obey come what may, and if she doesn't, then the angels will curse her until dawn. This narrative must be understood in the light of the Quran as well. It means that when a husband calls his wife for this relation, and obviously she is denying his right without any reason. I mean, she's not tired. She's also in the mood. She has all the reason to be intimate with his husband, her husband, but she willfully denies him. It is on such occasions that this curse has been sounded to women, that if they do so deliberately, they deliberately avoid the right of their husband, and this is what they will face. And on a similar note, husbands too have to understand that if their wives are not available for them to fulfill their desire, and they are on most occasions they have have sound reasons, I would say, then this narrative does not apply in those situations. They have to create an atmosphere in which their wives would like to become intimate with them, and this is something which husbands seldom realize today, and they think that the wife is at their bidding, and whenever they call her or they call her wife to their own wives for this purpose, then they should immediately comply. Whatever their situation is, whatever their circumstance at that time is, which is not correct. this narrative does not apply in such situations. It applies in situations where, as I said, when the denial is deliberate, when there is no apparent reason, and it's just like denying the right of the husband. And the husband equally has to understand this as well. And then we'll discuss another very important topic, which was also a custom of the Arab society in those times, and this is called zihar. And we're just going to read these verses. I'm going to read them out to you, but let me just tell you what exactly it is. So I'm just going to read out from Ustaz's book, its translation. It says, like ila, this was also a term of the Arab Jahiliyyah. It meant that a husband had uttered the following words for his wife, and these words are anta alayya ka zahri ummi, which means if I touch you, it would be as if I touched the back of my own mother. So this was like a oath which meant that just as I'm not going to touch my mother, I'm not going to touch you. So the Quran says that this is absolutely unbecoming of a husband. He cannot say these words. Your mother is your mother. Your wife cannot become your mother, and you cannot prohibit your wife for this. And this is an offense which the Quran has counted. And let me just read out the translation. I'm not going to read the Arabic, just to let you know what the Quran has said vis-a-vis this practice. So the Quran says, those among you who commit zihar with their wives. So zihar, again, what I've just said, zihar means that you regard your wife to be your mother. So this was a practice of Arab Jahiliyyah. So the Quran says that those among you who commit zihar with their wives, these wives cannot become their mothers. None can be their mothers except those who gave birth to them. And in fact, such people say something very immoral and false. And truly, Allah is forgiving and merciful. And in this matter, the directive is that those who do zihar with their wives then wish to go back on the words they uttered. Then a slave should be liberated before they touch each other. Thus you are admonished to do, and Allah is well acquainted with all that you do. And if a slave is not available to a person, he should fast for 2 months consecutively before they touch each other. And if he is unable to do this even, he should feed 60 indigent ones. This is because you may show your faith in Allah and His Messenger. Those are limits set by Allah. Only the rejectors of Allah and His messengers cross them, and there is a grievous punishment for such rejectors. So the punishment of zihar, or the atonement, to be more precise, that if you have sworn to regard your wife as your mother, it's a very grave offense. First of all, the Quran has corrected people and said that, well, this is absolutely not on. You cannot make your wife your mother. Your mothers are only those who have given birth to you. And if you utter these words, then you have to atone for them. You either liberate a slave, or you fast for 60 days consecutively, or you feed 60 people. And only then, of course, you would be able to go back to your wife, and it's a grievous thing. So we have to understand that as far as the Quran is concerned, this is something which we know that is not on at all, because as far as wives are concerned, they come into being, or this beautiful relationship comes into being because of a marital bond or a marital knot which is tied between the husband and wife. And uttering these words, which was the case of Arab Jahiliyyah, is something which was not liked by the Almighty. And because the Prophet was the last Prophet, Prophet Muhammad was to be the last Prophet, so these customs had to be set right as well. So we just discussed Ila. Again, the Quran said that this oath that you swear to sever sexual ties with your wives, this is also something that has to be done away with. And the practice of zihar has to be also done away with. And this brings us to an end to today's session as well. In the next sessions, inshallah, we'll take up a detailed topic, and that is the topic of divorce. It is something of it's something of which has been covered very, very comprehensively by the Quran. In fact, there is a whole surah of the Quran which is called Surah Talaq, which discusses the issue of talaq, which also tells us that if you have to part ways, then there is a method to it. neither ila nor zihar, none of them is the right way to part with your wives. The correct way is the one which the Quran has suggested. Inshallah, we'll discuss that in our next episodes. And remember, this is something which has also been given to us in a way that we must realize that this is an obligation that we must follow, and we must not in any way violate it. So we now come to an end to today's session, and if you have any questions regarding what we covered today, please raise them.
डॉक्टर साहब, मेरा सवाल ये है कि मास्टरबेशन के वाले से, कि जब आपने गांधी साहब से कहा था, सवाल किया था, तो उन्होंने कहा था कि ये हलाल है हम्बली फिका में। तो उसके बाद मैंने जब सुना पढ़ा तो उसमें कहते हैं कि हनफी, शाफी, मालिकी तीनों में हराम है। और कुरान शरीफ में जब सूरत नूर में आया कि जब तुम निकाह की इस्तात नहीं रखते तो अपने आप को पाक दमन रखो, वहाँ पे भी ऐसा कोई इशारा नहीं दिया गया। और उसके अलावा पूरे कुरान में कहीं ऐसा कोई इशारा नहीं। अल्लाह ताला जानते थे कि इस चीज़ की आदमी को ख्वाहिश है, और ना हदीस में ऐसा कोई इशारा है। और रसूलुल्लाह से जब पूछा गया था तो उन्होंने कहा था कि रोज़े रख लो, उन्होंने भी ऐसा कोई इशारा नहीं दिया। और इब्ने अब्बास से जब एक शख्स ने कहा था कि मैंने ऐसा किया है, तो उन्होंने कहा था कि इससे बेहतर निकाह था और ये ज़िना से बेहतर है, तो उसमें भी ऐसा कोई इशारा नहीं था। तो अगर गामदी साहब ने इसे कहा है कि हलाल है तो इस पे थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन कर दें प्लीज़।
So as far as masturbation is concerned or self-gratification is concerned, you see, first of all, you have to have recourse to the Quran and then, of course, to the sayings of the Prophet if you have to regard something as prohibited. So whether the Quran has recommended something or not is another case. But expressly, there is not a single verse in the Quran which says that masturbation is prohibited. The fact that there are some verses which have been implied to connote the fact that masturbation is prohibited, of course, the most significant of them is that then the Quran says, "Illa ala azwajihim aw ma malakat aymanuhum," which tells us that sexual relations with the sexual relations which a person has to satisfy can only be through his wife and through, in those times, of course, specifically regarding slave maidens. It is here, that you have to understand that if this was to be used as an explanation of the fact that you cannot have sexual relations other than the ones which have been prescribed, then the important thing is that this verse is not referring to masturbation in any way or prohibiting it. It is just telling us that if sexual relations are to be satisfied with a partner, with someone who is going to be with you, then that partner can only be your wife or, in those times, your slave lady. No other person can be responsible or could be with you to satisfy your sexual urge. So people who have derived the prohibition of masturbation from this verse, they don't realize that it's not talking about the fact that you cannot satisfy your sexual urge other than your wife and your slave lady. What it is saying here is that other than your wife and slave lady, there is no other person that you can go to satisfy your sexual lust. As far as the fact is concerned that if you're not able to marry, then you should try to keep should not indulge in sin. It is not referring to masturbation. It is referring to the fact that you should not indulge in adultery, in fornication, in zina. That is what that verse is stopping. And as far as the Prophet is concerned, there is not a single hadith which explicitly says that, or even implicitly says that masturbation is prohibited. There are some narratives which people present, but none of them is authentically narrated from the Prophet. They are weak and at times absolutely unreliable ones. So if as far as Abdullah ibn Abbas's opinion is concerned, we find other opinions ascribed to him as well. For example, the Sahaba, when people came up to them to discuss this practice, we know that they said that, well, it's like your own fluid. If you would like, why don't you just waste it away? We have these examples or these words being narrated from them. So all in all, I'm not going to go into details regarding the four schools of fiqh because they have their own reasoning and they seldom rely on just the Quran and Sunnah. They go towards at times they go towards weak hadith, and at times they go towards the aqwal of the tabi'un too. So as far as the Quran itself is concerned, there is no express prohibition. As far as authentic ahadith are concerned, there is absolutely no prohibition. So this is how Ustaz also explains it, and this is my opinion as well. Had it been prohibited, we would have had an express verse from the Quran or something from the Prophet. In the absence of this, it is left to our own discretion. Obviously, the medical side of masturbation is something that has also to be considered, which is not the topic of the Quran. It becomes a hazard because once a person starts doing it, it goes to an extreme. So that is something that has to be tackled in another way through your own medical sense. But what we are discussing here is religious prohibition. So neither the Quran nor the Hadith, as I've just explained, in any way, in any even a small way, have anything to say about the prohibition of self-gratification.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sulaiman Ahmed. Do you need any more clarifications, or was that it?
जी, मेरा सवाल आगे से एक है कि अगर एक नौजवान है जो फाइटिंग गेम्स खेलता है लाइक किक बॉक्सिंग वगैरह, वो ऑलरेडी खेल रहा है और उसको अब पता चला है कि ये सही नहीं है, तो जो उसने इस पे अभी तक कमाया है, वो फिर कमाई हराम में तो नहीं आएगी?
Obviously, I mean, you see, when a person realizes something, realization is something which always applies as soon as one realizes it. In the past, any such realization will not be effective. And even then, I mean, kickboxing or life-threatening games, they are not, I mean, you cannot term their income as haram in any way. All that you can say is that they are health hazards, they are things which are life-threatening and you should not indulge them, they are not recommended. But if a person, in spite of this advice, does indulge in these things, their income cannot be regarded as haram in any case, even if they do it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. I would like to remind participants of some of the housekeeping rules. So firstly, raising their hands to ask their questions or typing them in the chat. If you'd like to remain anonymous, you can send them directly to me. Please limit yourself to one question per round so that we could get through everyone's questions. And if you have more questions, you may raise your hand again. And if you'd like to ask clarifications, however, during your one question, you may do so as well. Bismillah, Tirmizi Ahmed, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem. My question to you is that if a husband and a wife, keep denying each other, just because of life, you have mentioned that it is not liked by God, and they should remain in a state of an active sexual relationship while they are in nikah with each other. But is there a reward after life? Because sexual intercourse is also like food. It's an instinct, it's a need. But if one spouse denies the other, but they're not in a relationship outside the marriage, is there also a reward in the afterlife? Because one was denied so much and they still remained pious and remained in the marriage. How is that addressed?
So all rights which are denied and for which a person remains steadfast and patient, whether it's sexual intimacy, whether it could be any other, obviously it's going to earn God's reward because you did not indulge in something which was proscribed, and you remained patient and you bore the brunt of it in a way that was, of course, it was very hard, but you still bore it. So yes, I think it would bear fruit for that person. But the question again is that this is something which, today there are couples who complain. There are couples, sometimes the wife is complaining, sometimes the husband is complaining. So other than the fact that this denial, is there, one important thing which the couples should address is that the reason of that, what is the reason for that? So if I can be more explicit and if I'm more candid in my response, I find that in today's world, men don't know how to, perhaps indulge in these relations the way a wife would like to have them. So there are things in which maybe they need to be taught, or maybe they need to read up more, maybe need to understand how the needs of the wife are to be addressed. So because I deal with a lot of cases which come to me, I can tell you out of my experience that in most cases, it is the inexperience of the husband which puts off the wife. That is the result of the fact that at times she becomes so disillusioned that she just says that I don't want this to happen, because it becomes more of a pain or more of a practice which has ill effects on her. So I think that, of course, yes, this is something which is which would bear reward. But other than that, I think this is one area that both husband and wife must work on. They must maybe consult a sex therapist, which they advise you in a way, in a manner that you know how this practice has to be done. Again, because of the thriving porn industry today, the way men and women view it and the way they would like to practice it as a couple is once again something which leaves a bad taste at times between the husband and wife. So you see, we have a lot of external factors going on, and these external factors, they have to be addressed. And instead of becoming disillusioned, or instead of just giving up on your husband or on your wife, I think this is an area that you have to be proactive, because after all, this is the pleasure which the Almighty has placed in this is the bliss that has been placed by the Almighty between husband and wife. It makes them close to one another. It is something which really cements their bond, because if you fall short in this, then this is that crevice which develops and then becomes a big it's like a big gap that might develop, and the wife also starts looking out of the marital knot, and the husband also starts doing so, because they are not satisfying one's needs. So the important thing is that this has to be addressed. I speak on this issue, have spoken on this issue on various forums, and I think, as I said, this is generally this occurs because of a lack of education regarding what is to be done in this situation, how exactly a husband and a wife need to satisfy one another, and what exactly are these practices that should be conducted. So I think this is a matter of education. There should be no shame, there should be no inhibition in learning these things, because you see, a lack of not knowing these things is taking its toll in marital relations.
I think that is a very, very important point that you've raised. Another thing, Mike, is there a frequency? I know, of course, it's something instinctual, but does Islam say, because, like in other practices of Islam, you're supposed to say your namaz 5 times a day, you do your roza to keep you, in a certain loop. Is there a loop in this also?
There is
where
no such
people-
thing, because you see, worship rituals, they are our spiritual need. So this is a physical need, and I mean, it depends on the couple. It depends on a lot of things. Nothing has been prescribed. It's totally the prerogative, totally the choice of the couple.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem.
Shabnam, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Maria. सर आपने एक रिवायत कोट की कि during इत्तिकाफ Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to take his head out and Hazrat Aisha would comb it. So sir, isn't it that during itikaf it is undesirable to interact with other people, especially intimately, and put our focus more on ibadat? Like,
this is a very erroneous concept. I mean, 24 hours in itikaf, you need to freshen up yourselves. You need to take a bath. That's another thing which people generally think, that you cannot take a bath during itikaf. I mean, itikaf has to be taken as a ritual in which you are devoting yourself to the Almighty. So that devotion needs your own freshness of mind as well. Remember, if you're sitting for 10 days, as the Prophet would do so, you just cannot. It needs something of a superhuman effort, and not only that, I mean, it makes you lose interest also. So this is a wrong notion that I mean, you cannot do things. Yes, what the recommendation is that only compelling human needs should be met with in such situations. Other than that, if you need to even go out of your mosque place of itikaf for any compelling human need, you are allowed to do so. I have seen people these restrictions which were never part of the Prophet's directives, that they would not allow even the person who is sitting for itikaf to go for the funeral of a very close one. So I have seen a father being denied the option to go to attend the funeral of his son simply because he was sitting in itikaf. I mean, this is no recommendation. The recommendation is that yes, you have to devote yourself to God in these 10 days or 9 days or whatever the time you have, as much as possible. But any compelling human need is something that can be met with. And this is what the Prophet did. And unfortunately, instead of following the Prophet, we are following more of our own self-imposed restrictions.
I'm sorry, sir, if it's being disrespectful, but was it a compelling need?
You see, you don't know in those times that sitting in the mosque for 10 days, and the mosque was not something which was outside of the premises. It was his own quarters, his own room, or Aisha anha's quarter was like this. It was absolutely adjacent. So if the Prophet just stuck out his head so that she could comb his hair, I mean, I find no reason to be against it. He could have done it himself, and if he had asked his wife to do it, there's no difference for that. Because I mean, he was not even going out of the mosque. He was just, I mean, within the mosque, and he was just letting her do so. So, I mean, this also sheds light on how, at times, what might seem uncompelling to us could be compelling to someone else. So, let the person decide what is compelling for oneself or not. I mean, it could not be compelling for you, but it could be compelling for someone else.
Right, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Siddiqa, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. My question is regarding a term in Surah Nisa. I believe it's in Ayah 34. There's a term, nashuz, which I believe means rebellion. I wanted to know, besides cheating, what else would qualify as rebellion?
Well, cheating is, of course, something which we know is an extreme form of that. Other than that, I mean, if you say that, well, my decision is going to prevail, if there is a difference of opinion, that is what nushuz is. So you see, nushuz is that you take up the stance of your husband or the position of your husband. So a husband is the head of the family. In case of a stalemate, in case of a deadlock, his opinion would prevail. Not that it's because it's right, but because someone has to, I mean, someone's opinion has to prevail. So the Quran deemed it appropriate that because he is running the show or he's running the affairs of maintenance, so he be given this right. So if the wife starts to stand up and challenge this authority and says that, well, if there is a deadlock, then my opinion is going to prevail. So this is another example of nushuz, and it need not be something which is going to take place. I mean, you have to witness it in order to stop her, because the Quran says when you fear rebellion, so which means that you it's not happened already, but you know that it might even happen very, very soon. So in such a situation, in order to curb it from happening, you can undertake this measure.
Bisma, please go ahead, and in case we have time, Suleiman will take non-topic related questions, but we still have plenty of topic related questions for now, so please hold on. Bisma, please go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Saleem, tell me, I'm assuming that in the Arab times, water was a little scarce. What is the prescribed way for people to cleanse themselves if there's no water available, after sexual intercourse? And are women supposed to wash their hair every time? Is that something that is, people just say, or is there true factual?
So you see, this is not correct to say that water was scarce in the times of Prophet. Water was there, but yes, there are exemptions in case of illness, in case of any other reason. Scarcity is also one reason. You can do tayammum. It will suffice for namaz. It will suffice for other rituals as well. So tayammum, just as it is something that you can do in the case of wuzu, it also is something that you can do in place of ghusl as well, if the situation is such. As far as the method of ghusl is concerned, it is something that has been demonstrated by the Prophet, and we know that the wives of the Prophet have transmitted the way the Prophet would do this ghusl. I mean, you can look it up, but the summary of that is that you just need to thoroughly wash yourself. Women at times, they have hair which is tied together, so it's not essential that they open up the hair. It's just that if the hair is braided or tied, they just need to spill some water in a way that it as far as possible it wets the hair, and that is sufficient. So, but for any reason, if this is not possible, any reason, which means that you're compelled out of necessity not to have a bath, and as I said, illness could be one of those reasons. and scarcity of water could be another reason. So in such a situation, doing tayammum would suffice as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Shiraz Ahmed, please go ahead and then we'll move on to the chat questions.
Thank you, Sister. Assalamu alaikum, Shehzad Bhai. Shehzad Bhai, my question is again related to 434, what Sadiqa asked earlier regarding the shoes, right? Uh, you said cheating is an extreme form of it, so let's not discuss that. But because Nishuz in itself, like you have explained in the past, and Ghamidi Sahib have explained on multiple occasions in the past, that it's not about any disagreement, just any random disagreement, right? The husband and spouses are two different people, that they can have their own mindset, and there can always be a difference of opinion. So if I break the law, if I break the signal, traffic signal, it's the example given by Ghamidi Sahib. I am breaking the law, but it's not rebellion against the state. Wife can do the same. So this question comes up a lot when during Quran classes, that what exactly qualifies as nushuz, because it's in it, the word itself is an extreme form. That's why Sadiqa was earlier on asking specific examples. So cheating, how extreme may it sound, is a specific example. Can you just please guide us, just give us one, two.
I think that, just as the Quran has not given us an example, the examples are not important. The importance is that you start behaving as the head of the family. You would like to have your decision prevail in case of a deadlock. It could be anything. If you start insisting that my decision is going to prevail. You see, the hierarchy which the Quran has prescribed is that in case of a deadlock, in case of a stalemate, whenever there is a deadlock, obviously both of the spouses will try to convince one another that, well, let's come to some conclusion. Maybe this is something that we can discuss, so and so. And they should, of course, do their due. But after a lot of discussion, if they are still stuck at some place and both are equally adamant that my opinion is the right one and it should be followed, then there has to be some opinion that must prevail. So if on such an occasion, it could be any instance, on such an occasion, if the wife says that my opinion is going to prevail, so this is what nushuz is. So she is now acting as the head of the family, or a prerogative that she never had. So the issue at hand could be something very trivial, but the thing is that she is now in a position, or she is invested in herself this position, that my position now is of the family's head, and in case of a stalemate, my opinion is going to prevail. So I think you have to understand this mentality which the Quran is portraying here. Individual examples could be several. It could be, for example, a simple thing. I can give you an example because this is something which happened amongst one of my friends, and the husband and wife were disagreeing on which school would they like their children to send. One of the child was to be sent to school, and there was a huge argument. And it's a very small thing, and there were people on one side and there were people on the other side, and ultimately the husband and the wife, the board discussed that, well, look, this school is better for the child, and she said that this school is better, and there were merits and demerits, and there was an unending discussion. But of course the child could not go to both schools. Now what has to be done? It's such a small thing, but now you cannot, if the husband had let it go and he would have said, well, my opinion is correct, but I'll let your opinion prevail, that would have been fine. But on such occasions, if the wife says, well, we have discussed enough and we are not getting convinced, so my opinion is going to prevail. So whenever this situation or this scenario arises, it is here that the Quran says that this is nushuz.
Because so many sisters, right, they're half of my age, they're like daughters to me, they ask me this question, and many times they have very legitimate point. So supposedly, it's just a follow-up question on this exact same word, nushuz. If unfortunately a beautiful sister of ours get married to a stubborn person, then anything she says that's against his opinion can technically become an issue. So I think that at some level we have to qualify. If she likes tea and he likes coffee.
This is where we can tell them. So you see, this is what we can tell them. This is not nushuz. You see, this only means that a difference of opinion has been regarded as rebellion or nushuz. This the Quran never says. If the wife doesn't like something and the husband likes something, both wishes have to be respected equally and they have to be obeyed. I mean, the wife cannot impose her will on the husband and the husband cannot impose the will on the wife. And if either of them is doing so, they are infringing each other's rights. So I think what has happened is, because in our subcontinental culture, any difference of opinion is regarded as nushuz. So therefore, people don't make this distinction that nushuz is an extreme case. And in my so many years of marital counseling, I have yet to see nushuz. Can you imagine? I mean, cases of divorce come every now and then, but very few women challenge the authority of their husband because they already know that this is the setup they are following. It is generally a wrong perception of nushuz, as a result of which the husband flouts the rights of his wife that this takes place. Otherwise, I mean, we can ask ourselves that why at all would a woman do this? I mean, before marriage, when she's coming into contact with her husband, she knows that he's the head of the family. She's accepting her as the head of the family. I mean, she's entering into this bond by first acknowledging that I'm not the head of the family, he is the head of the family. So she's doing this consciously. So you can just imagine that how at all this situation can arise. So first of all, it's a very, very exceptional situation. It's not like a thing that's going to happen in the life of every person. But yes, there could be instances. So on such instances, the Quran says that in order to preserve the family, in order to stop from breaking up, because you see, you cannot have two heads of the family at the same time. Just one person can be the head. So the Quran suggests that this matter should be taken into proper legal and in its proper perspective, and it should try to be resolved. But for example, if the wife insists on nushuz, then I mean, the simple scenario that would result is that there would be a breakup in the family, there would be a divorce in either case, and she says that I'm the head of the family, the husband says no, nothing doing. So ultimately, when the husband would also see that any measure that he takes will not disallow the wife, then the normal situation that should arise in these situations is that he just, I mean, lets go and let the wife, and sets free the wife, and the wife, of course, would know that this is the only other alternative. He can only use this option of nushuz, in which he ends up even punishing his wife, when he sees any light or any potential that this procedure might stop her from perpetuating that nushuz. So you see, I mean, this is such an exceptional situation, and I often talk to a lot of women on this issue, and I also, let them know that this seldom arises in the life of people. So you must not confuse nushuz with any difference of opinion, and people who have done so, they think that this is a normal practice.
Yes, my last comment is that even the Prophet himself said, in his hadith, that when I tell you something about religion, you must follow it. So even he is defining that what is nushuz in his case, then when he tells us something that is specific to Islam and we don't regard it, of course we are performing nushuz against it. But if Prophet tells me that Shiraz wear black and I think that pinks look good on me, the wifey touch, right? So I can wear pink, and it's no disrespect to Prophet and God. That's where I think that people like you, I need to learn from people like you exactly the boundaries, that from where the issues start, not a specific example like going to school, I'm not looking for that, but after what limit the issue starts. Because everyday life, we can have disagreements, but I think I've already taken too much of your time, and in future, I will still need your time and guidance on this one word.
I know this is it's a very sensitive issue, and maybe we need more time to discuss it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next one is, if a couple does not have children and the whole purpose of marriage is to provide a safe environment for children, what do we say to those couples? Are they of no use?
Certainly not. I mean, they can adopt a child. I mean, adoption is not prohibited. And of course, this is also...
Do they have to?
I mean, they don't have to. But if they are managing the way they are without getting any children naturally, and if they are still perfectly engaged and they find that there's nothing which is pressing, they can remain as they are, because we should also know that this is also an exception. So in God's world, the number of people who don't have children at all, if you measure them against those people who have children, the percentage would be awfully little. So this is a very, very rare exception if you take it in the whole grand scheme of things. But in such cases, it is on the discretion of the couple, if they would like to remain as they are, or maybe adopt children, or even take pets.
Facebook question about coming out of
Okay.
i'tikaf to cook in the kitchen. Is that okay?
Well, if there is no other option left, then yes. You see, you are doing i'tikaf according to your own situation. If you are the only person who is living in that house, or maybe you don't have any help, or there's no other person to cook, then for any compelling need, yes, that is one option that you can do. And also what you have to understand is that even for women, the recommended place for i'tikaf is the mosque. It is unfortunate that today there are mosques, or there are many Muslim countries in which this is not possible, or people think that this is not possible. Otherwise, the recommended place for even women is the mosque. And if that is not possible for some reason, then the house, of course, is there. And if in the house she's the only person who can cook maybe, or there are no other alternatives, then yes, that can be done.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Saleem, for staying over time and tackling this very important topic.